Hey everybody, Marcos Villegas here in Manhattan Beach, being joined with this little guy right here. Not so little, a lot taller than me. Eddie Hearn,
how you doing?
The head of Matchroom here in LA.
Everyone always, whenever they see me, wow, man. It's like I'm a sort of freak show. They go, they sort of point at me. I didn't realise you were so tall, man. It's
you are. I don't know. Maybe it's the TV.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's because I'm standing with Joshua a lot, so he makes me look small.
Okay, maybe that too. You know, he makes everybody.
Exactly.
Imagine Matt right here, right behind the camera. He's like 5'2".
Matt, how you doing down there?
So, what do you think I'm going to talk to you about, man?
Everything, whatever you want.
All right.
So people always say to me in interviews, like, is there anything you don't want me to ask? Like, what's the point of doing the interview? Like,
well, what's the point of them even saying that? They're not doing their job if they're telling you that.
So you can ask me whatever you want.
Well, what do you think about the decentralized blockchain?
Apart from that.
I'm just messing with you, bro.
Things like that. Just boxing.
Nothing about Bitcoin whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was hoping to get some tips from you, man.
Don't. Leave it alone.
All right, so there was a crazy fight that happened over the weekend. I know this whole week you've been asked about it, but my question on it was, what were the few things that stuck out to you the most about how Wilder and Ortiz fought that fight?
Well, I think there are some things that we learned and some things that we already knew. We know that Wilder is reckless. His technique's not the best. We know he can punch. So he showed all of those things. But he also showed that he has a big heart. And I didn't doubt his heart, but until you prove it, you know, the world, and he showed that he has a big heart, which is good news for fight fans, because when Anthony Joshua gets in with him, he's going to show a lot of heart, Wilder, and therefore it's going to be destructive.
Were you guys stressing in that middle round? Yeah, because it's funny. Let me tell you a funny little thing. Yeah. I was next to the guys at the BBC, and I'm like, man, this is slipping away, and they're like, oh, we know. So I would imagine with you guys.
Yeah, the seventh round, I mean, he was gone.
Yeah.
But listen, Joshua looked gone in the fifth round against Klitschko. So it's not a criticism. I mean, the 20 seconds that the New York Commission gave him, rightfully so, within their rules, was a complete, potentially a career saver for Deontay Wilder, because those
a lot of people were tripping about that, though. Yeah, they're saying that it wasn't right for them to give him that time.
Listen, at the end of the day, you can't criticise Deontay for that. You can't criticise even the commission. That's their new ruling, you know, and that's there for a reason, you know, in reaction to previous incidents that have happened in the commission area. So I don't like it because it gives a fighter a chance to recover, or can sometimes change the momentum of a fight. But fighters' health is paramount, and Deontay Wilder looked like he potentially could be stopped at that moment at the end of the seventh round. So that definitely helped him. I mean, a lot of people are talking about, I spoke to Luis Ortiz's team, you know, and they're sort of talking about illegal punches and roundabout. I mean, he hits with the inside of his hands a lot.
It looked with some punches, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, like it went yeah.
But that's okay, because what people don't know about Anthony Joshua is, are we allowed to swear on this channel?
Yeah, of course. It's the internet. It's watched by a lot of people, but you can go ahead.
He's a bad motherfucker. And he wants to do damage to Deontay Wilder.
How bad?
Bad. But he's also an ambassador. And it's not, you know, people talk about, this Joshua's a bit fake. No. That's the man that Joshua has become, that boxing has made him, that he wants to be a respectful person. He wants to be an ambassador. It's not a front, but underneath that is a bad kid from the streets. And you have to have that in you to be a great fighter. You can't have come from a great upbringing, you know, and had everything you wanted and expect to show heart like that in a ring. Same with Deontay. He's had his own struggles. All fighters have their own struggles. So remember that when Wilder's goading him and Wilder's disrespecting Anthony Joshua, that sits in there. These are guys from the streets. They're not, you know, and when someone disrespects you in this sport, you know, you've got to realise what they want to do. And that's why Joshua wants to fight Wilder.
What's most disrespected him? Like, what's set him off the most that Deontay has said?
It's not really, you know, name calling. Or it's just the constant goading, call him out. He's running. You know, he's calling him, I guess, a bitch or a coward or what, you know, in that respect. The truth is, he's never been running. Do you know how many times Deontay Wilder's team have contacted us to try and make a fight? 0. Never once have they picked up the phone to try and make this fight. The only contact that's ever been made was by me to them to arrange a meeting. We had a meeting with Shirley Winkle and that's his new name, and Al Heyman.
Why do you call him Shirley Winkle?
Shirley Winkle.
Shirley Winkle.
Shirley Winkle. I don't know. He's just like a cartoon character. He's one of, in boxing you've got some real characters, and Shirley Winkle's one of them. Like, but he's like Bob. I mean, Bob Arum. I spent some time with Bob Arum yesterday, and
You know something, Eddie.
no, but he's a legend. Do you know what I mean? Shirley Winkle's not a legend, but he's been around the sport, you know, but it's a new sport now. It's a new age, you know, and Bob knows that. Bob's got a great team of people at Top Rank who are embracing the new age. You know, it's not Bob that's initiating an app or running the social media or, you know, but Bob is a leader and he's a great mind. So when we met with Shirley Winkle and Al Heyman, we spoke. Shirley, it's going to be difficult for me and Shirley because we're on a completely different wavelength. So I sent my dad.
You're making me laugh because you keep saying the name, and I just.
I know. So I sent my dad to go and see him.
Which Shelley brought that up at the press conference. Yeah.
My dad has known Shirley for years and years and years. Right. They talk about loads of shit. Like, oh, do you remember back in the day when Ali was... I mean, and so he came back to me and said, look, we had a chat, blah, 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 blah. I wrote to Shirley and said, great that you had a meeting. Let me send you some numbers. No problem.
So at that point, he brought that up at the press conference. He showed us the paper, and he said that he did not hear from you guys since then.
Correct.
And that because of that, from what he's saying, he feels that you guys are avoiding the fight at this point.
So let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, during that period, Deontay Wilder come out and said, I will only accept 50-50 in this fight. Complete waste of time. Not happening. So that made me think, why bother? Number two is, if you want to fight so badly, do you know that when I sent them that email saying, let me get back to you with some numbers, do you know how many times they called me back or chased me? 0. If you told me that you're sending me something, if you told me that you want to fight, I'm calling you every fucking day. I'm calling you every hour, waiting on it. So I believe that Deontay Wilder wants his fight. It's not a case of I don't believe Shirley Winkle wants to fight. I do. But they're not making a conscious effort. Deontay Wilder's had 8 defences of his world title. Do you know how many unifications he's had? 0. Do you know why? Because they haven't got the money in the bank to make the big fights. Do you know why? Because Deontay Wilder's not a draw. Now he's becoming a draw. Last Saturday was a big night for Deontay Wilder, for his career, for his profile. I feel sorry for him. He has no promoter. He does everything on his own. And he's a great self-promoter. He's out, like, whoring himself to the media. Great to have a fighter like that. I couldn't do it with Anthony Joshua. If I told Anthony Joshua on fight week to get in a car and go across town to a radio station, no chance. That's my job. You go and do it, tell me. I'm preparing for my fight, you know? But Deontay is a great self-promoter because he has to do everything himself. Last week was a breakthrough night for him. In terms of profile, in terms of credibility, in terms of as a fighter. And I have a lot of respect for Deontay Wilder. As far as I'm concerned, he's a promoter's dream. He's a heavyweight world champion that can fight, who is exciting and talks great and looks great. What more could you want? So I feel sorry for him in that respect. But I also give him a lot of credit after his win last week. And I'm delighted that he got the win because it makes the Joshua fight much, much bigger. And during the 7th round, I was sitting there going, oh my God, like, it's a big fight. And don't,
a lot of money.
But also people say to, oh, Eddie Hearn don't want this fight. If you know Eddie Hearn, you know he wants to make the biggest fights in boxing. I want to make money. I want to provide a legacy for my fighter. I want to provide an opportunity for my fighter to become undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I've represented Anthony Joshua from his debut to this point. For me, and again, forget the money, for me to have guided the undisputed heavyweight champion to the top means more than any amount of money. That's something you can never take away. For these guys, they're creating their legacy. From a selfish point of view, your aspiration might be to grow your channel as much as possible, to hit the most amount of views you can, to do big sponsorship deals or commercial deals for your channel. Mine is to create great nights, to remember those nights, to guide fighters in ways, life-changing ways, that will change their life, that will let them achieve something that they set out to achieve, to create a legacy. And there's no bigger legacy than the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. If I didn't want to be in those kind of fights, or my fighters to be in those kind of fights, well, mate, it doesn't make sense. So when the time is right to make that fight, it won't be via Shirley Winkle, it'll be via Al Heyman and probably Luis de Cubas, who I make a lot of big fights with. And when we sit down to make that fight with someone like them, it will happen in 24, 48 hours. That fight will get made. And fans need to know that that fight is inevitable. But Anthony Joshua has a very tough fight on March 31st. I think technically a tougher fight than Deontay Wilder. Not necessarily as dangerous, but like I see the Wilder fight, and so does AJ. It's straightforward. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be electric. But technically, AJ is going to pick him off. He's going to beat him up, and he's going to punish him. No, Wilder. Parker's going to be a breakdown job. Parker's going to move. He's going to have a lot of speed. He's going to be clever. They're going to have a game plan. Wilder against AJ, I think the game plan's going out the window. It's going to be an absolute barn burner. But it's all irrelevant unless AJ wins on March 31st.
So many questions from what you said. The first being is, with what you said, have you reached back out to them to make the fight this year, or is your plan, in order to make the fight bigger, have Joshua fight here and then go into a Wilder fight so you expose him to the U.S. audience?
That would make sense, but you try explaining that to the fans.
Oh, no, the fans they want it now, but you can't always do things now because
our job is to provide for the fans.
Yeah.
Our job is to give the public what they want. That's how you keep boxing strong. That's how you keep it the great sport that it is. So, and Anthony wants to do that. He wants to give the fans what they want. He wants to fight Wilder now, like straight away, no messing. And there is a very strong chance that he'll be next after Parker.
How strong? How likely? How confident are you?
80%, something like that. Yeah. Okay. And I think that, listen, from an ideal perspective, maybe they'd even box on the same night in New York, you know, before that fight's made. It will make the fight even bigger. But also, Deontay Wilder nearly lost on Saturday. Anthony Joshua may lose on March 31st, or may, you know. So let's not lose the opportunity to make the biggest fight in world boxing. So I think there's a very good chance it could happen next. But again, we have to see on March 31st.
Joshua, does he have a date already set in MSG for potentially Jarrell Miller?
No. We're dealing right now with Brooklyn Boxing and Brett Yormack, who have been very good to us. They've committed to us on Daniel Jacobs. You know, we was at the Nassau Coliseum on November 11th. April 28th, we're in the Barclays for Jacob Sulecki. So, you know, I think if the Joshua fight comes over here, in terms of Jarrell Miller or another defence, it will be at the Barclays Centre. And, you know, it's just a case of, do we fight a Jarrell Miller? Not just Jarrell Miller. Do we fight a Bryant Jennings? I don't know. It has to be an American heavyweight. We've also got a mandatory upcoming with Alexander Povetkin, if he beats David Price, who's fighting on the same card. So we'll see. But loads of things can happen. But right now, honestly, like, I'm expecting a real tough fight on March 31st. So I don't want to get caught up, and Joshua caught up in Wilder, when we have a unification fight on March 31st. He's had 20 fights. He's had 5 heavyweight world championship defences, and this is his second unification. He's moving at an incredible rate.
How does Tyson Fury go in the mix with all that? Would you see if Fury looked good in his comeback fight? Would you go over the Wilder fight to make that fight? Because I would think that fight would be bigger over in the UK than a Wilder fight.
I think the Wilder fight is now growing into a huge international fight. You know, we had his fight against Ortiz on Sky, did great numbers. The UK public know who he is. And it's the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. It doesn't get any bigger. The Fury fight is very big. I expect Fury to come back with a couple of relatively straightforward fights first. I think he needs it, and I think he wants it. And then, yeah, I'd love to make Fury Joshua. Massive fight. And I think he has a little way to go, but
For you, priority-wise, what would you? Well, you'd prefer both, but
the priority is Deontay Wilder. Because AJ wants the belts. You know, it's the only way you can measure success in this sport. Money in the bank and belts on the mantelpiece. And once you earn the money, which AJ has done, it's not like, obviously it's my job to make sure that he gets paid, but it's not for him. It's about legacy. He wants to be the undisputed champion. He wants to beat Deontay Wilder. He wants to beat Joseph Parker, and he's going about everything in a very straightforward manner. There's no ducking, there's no swerving, there's no dodging. It's Charles Martin, a couple of defences, Vladimir Klitschko, one more defence, Joseph Parker, maybe one more defence, or Deontay Wilder. That's the route. How can you knock a kid that potentially after 22 fights could have a resume that says became world champion, fought Vladimir Klitschko unified, fought Joseph Parker unified, and beat Deontay Wilder to become heavyweight champion of the world, possibly after 22 fights? That's historic, and that's what we want.
In terms of how Joshua perceives the Ortiz fight, I mean the Wilder fight, what did he tell you about that fight? Does he say he beats him easily? Does he think it's a tough fight?
He knows he carries power. He thinks that is a very easy fight.
Even with that equalizer that Wilder has.
He knows it's dangerous. But in terms of technique, in terms of everything he knows, he does maybe an easy fight a little bit, but he doesn't see an issue in that fight at all. He thinks the Parker fight is a much tougher fight. Technically. I'm not saying Parker hits as hard as Wilder. He can punch. But technically, Wilder is not a difficult fight. Technically, Anthony Joshua is on another stratosphere to Deontay Wilder. But he does carry power. He does like to trade. He is unorthodox. And Anthony Joshua does like to trade. He likes to have a fight. And he will want to have a fight with Deontay Wilder, and that's dangerous.
You going to sign Tyson Fury? Is that the big thing that's going around now?
No, people. Look, we've got a lot of big things happening at the moment. I mentioned that in an interview. It's more to do with our business in America, and people just presume that that news was we're signing Tyson Fury. We're not about to sign Tyson Fury.
But there's been discussions.
There have been discussions. Some are ongoing. He's talking to everybody. The smart thing to do is to come with us, gear up towards a Joshua fight, but he's going to make his own decisions. But there's certainly, you're not about to see in the next day, week, that Tyson Fury's joined Matchroom. I hope he does.
How close is he though? Is it you? Yeah, are you confident that he will? Has it gotten to a point where you're pretty confident that he offers the best?
I think he has a lot of obstacles to overcome elsewhere on different bits and pieces. The straightforward thing to do, the sensible thing to do, is to sign with us, in my opinion. We can box him in the UK, in the US, we can gear him up for the AJ fight. But I don't know. He may not like me. He may not. There's always this sort of mindset in the UK. People say that Matchroom have a monopoly on boxing. I don't agree with that, actually.
I wasn't even aware of that, to be honest, because there's a lot of promoters in the UK.
Yeah, but people accuse us of having a monopoly. A monopoly is some
because you have all the fighters, or
all the fighters. We do the best shows, etc., etc. So there's this feeling that we don't want to go with the system. Do you know what I mean? And some fighters that have that, not a chip on their shoulder, but back against the wall mentality. Yeah. We don't want to sign with Matchroom. Yeah, rebel man. We don't want to sign with Matchroom. We want to go and do our own thing. Exactly. And when Amir Khan joined, it was like that was a good example where the straightforward thing to do, the right thing for Amir Khan to do, was to sign with Matchroom and Sky. But we haven't got on in the past, or we've said a few things backward and forwards, but we both swallowed our ego and said this is the right thing to do. Now, the path's very straightforward. It's the same for Tyson Fury. It's the same for other fighters out there at the moment that aren't with us. But it's just a case of saying, it's not even you have to swallow your pride. It's just you have to think logically. You have to think smart in boxing. And I think if Tyson Fury thinks smart, he will sign with us.
How much time we got, Eddie? We still got some time?
Yeah, we've got the weigh-in coming up, and we've got another fight.
What are we at? Okay, so things are just heating up overall in boxing, and I want to get your thoughts on what's going, this beef that's happening between the Charlos and Danny. Yeah. So that's starting to build up into something that fans really want to see. I know there's Canelo and Golovkin out there, but
I think the police are looking for Charlo's soul after Danny took it in the corridor. But did you see it? I
was there.
I was like, Danny Jacobs, you're the boy. You put it on him, and it's great. All the Charlo brothers are two very, very talented fighters, and they're making noise. They're causing a bit of controversy. I love it. You know, he's tweeting me last night. He says I'm the new Don King. This is like Jermall, Charlo. I went back. I said, well, listen, let's do it. Special K Brook against you. Danny Jacobs against your brother. Same night. It's a 2-0 win for Matchroom Boxing.
You put on a wig too and all that?
Yeah, exactly. I think my business ethics are a little bit different, but American boxing misses Don King from a promotional point of view.
When he speaks, it's great.
Show me the real promoters out there in boxing right now in America. They don't exist. You know.
What do you mean by that? Real? For you, what's a real promoter?
Being a promoter is someone who is banging the drum non-stop, who is constantly pushing the boundaries, pushing the patience of everybody, fighters, winding them up, goading them. You know, and you'll see that from me as we come into the market. You know, I'm everywhere. You ain't not going to beat my work ethic. You're not going to beat. I'm on the road. I'll go anywhere. That's my job as to represent a fighter in that way. That's what I mean by real promoters, pure promoters. And I'm not, listen, top rank of brilliant promoters, Golden Boy, good promoters. But who is on the road beating the drum? You know, Bob used to do it, but obviously he's getting on a bit now. But some people don't want to do that. But that's my style, not Don King style, quite that. But I admire him as a promoter. As in other areas, maybe, it might change. But I think that in terms of the Charlos, yeah, I love Charlo against Danny Jacobs, and I love Charlo against Kell Brook. You know, big fight night that is. And the aim for Danny Jacobs is to fight Gennady Golovkin and Canelo winner. If we don't get that, I'd like to make the Charlo fight. It's a great fight, two very good fighters, and they talk a lot. But I couldn't help but laugh when that little fracas happened, because Charlo, he looked lost. You know, it was until 30 of his friends turned up, he really didn't know what to say. And Danny Jacobs is one cool dude. I mean, did you see that shirt? You know, you've got to be a bad motherfucker if you wear a shirt like that. So
it's funny how all this ties in. So you got the Charlos, Golovkin, Canelo, and then you got this thing that happened with Canelo. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but do you feel, in your opinion, the fight should be called off, or what they're doing is the right thing, and he's doing the right things to prove that it is a tainted sample?
The truth is that we'll probably never know. You have to make your own decisions and judgments, which is sometimes dangerous. Was he cheating? Was he unlucky? Either way, his reputation is tarnished forever. Because it doesn't matter. You fail a drugs test, you fail a drugs test. You look at his physique on the scales for the last Golovkin fight, everyone is already suspicious, and even more so now. If he's been unlucky, then I feel terrible for him, because maybe he is innocent. We will never know. What I will say is that it's terrible for boxing that possibly, or the biggest superstar in the sport, has failed a drugs test. I think that the only way you're going to catch drug cheats is by random testing. And the WBA and the WBC do a good job on that. But the commissions have to step up, in my opinion, to enforce random testing. In England, in Britain, the British Boxing Board of Control, all the championship fighters are on random drug testing. UCAD will turn up, test them in camp. There's no escape.
It's a weird thing over here, because there's so many commissions.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem. Yeah, and the UK's, I guess, a sizable area where you could have one body.
An American boxing federation that governed all commissions, they could introduce an anti-doping program, a random testing on the night at fights, complete waste of time. These guys, if they're cheating, they're breaking cycles. They know exactly what they're doing. Cheating in boxing is not like cheating in the Tour de France. It's not like cheating at 100 metres. The aim of boxing is to, and to do that illegally or to enhance that performance. I'm not talking about banning fighters, I'm talking about imprisoning people who do that. Some fighters get caught and they've been unlucky, but ultimately you are responsible for your sample. So anyone that gets caught is guilty. Now, whether they did that intentionally or not, that's always up for debate. Some fighters I know have tested positive. I believe that they didn't do it intentionally. Maybe I'm naive, but I believe that the commissions have to have random testing in and the New York Commission, the California Commission, random testing programs for fighters that they represent. because it's the only way you're gonna beat these people. Science moves very fast. If fighters, if promoters, if doctors, if trainers believe they can get an edge in a fight, there's a lot of money at stake. But should the fight take place? I believe that's the decision more for the camps. If Gennady Golovkin and Tom Loeffler are happy with what's being put in place, then and so are the commission, then I think the fight should go ahead. You know.
Do you think after the fight, if Canelo wins, there's going to be this asterisk from fans?
Well, we're a long way out, and I don't, I mean, if he's having continuous testing, I don't believe that. What are we? We're probably, yeah. So, but again, having spoke to doctors, when we put a VADA random testing in process, previously we've done it with 8 weeks to go. The doctors have told me it's the biggest waste of time going. You need it 16 weeks out, because a drug cheat will stop their cycle probably by 8 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Which is about the time that this has happened, which again don't look great. So we'll see. But all of our stuff is 12 to 14 weeks when we do a fight, because 6 weeks, it's irrelevant, but it's not great.
Certainly, it's a lot of questions arise from it. And it's something that over the course of years, fighters from Mexico have gotten that. Yeah. And even the soccer team,
Neri,
Morales. Yeah.
I mean, look, maybe it's, but the fact is that his team, Canelo, Alvarez, these are professionals. If there is any doubt that meat or food is contaminated, you really have. That's your responsibility. If this has happened before, they should know that meat in Mexico has the ability to be contaminated. Therefore, don't eat meat in Mexico, because you are, as I said, you are responsible for your sample. He has been found guilty. He's failed a drugs test. Again, was it intentional? Was it? We don't know. But that's the truth, the hard facts. So it's got to be dealt with.
All right, Eddie. Thank you so much, man. It was a great chat. Really appreciate it. Eddie Hearn, of course, here in the U.S. A lot of big things coming. Got my fingers crossed. Wilder, Joshua next.
Joshua Wilder.
Joshua Wilder. There you go. Thanks, guys.